Welcome to Tech Talk Tuesday, brought to you by Idaho Public Television and Montana PBS.
Hello and welcome to Tech Talk Tuesday. For the month of October, we've been talking sort of all things trauma informed and social emotional learning, adverse childhood experiences. And I'm excited for who we have here today. We have two teachers here today to share their experiences. We wanted to offer the perspectives of we wanted to give you the elementary side and the secondary side because we know that those are both critical. So we have Katie Mason from Idaho Public, or from Idaho. She's not from Idaho Public Television, though. Maybe I can do something about that. She's from the the Boise School District in Idaho and a digital innovator. She taught the primary grades, first grade, and I don't know what else. She can tell you all that stuff. Now she's an instructional coach with the Boise School District and a really great resource for trauma-informed learning. And then we also have Sarah Dahl from Montana, who is also an instructional coach, but is a former secondary English teacher. So we're excited to have both of these teachers here today to talk a little bit more about, we spent the last two webinars really defining and talking about what adverse childhood experiences are, what trauma-informed classrooms are, and then sort of social emotional learning. And now these awesome educators are here to share some really practical ways that you can now implement those things in your classroom. So Katie, I am curious, especially with the younger ones. My background is fifth grade, and so I'm a little bit in that intermediate age. I don't have a ton of early childhood experience, so I'm excited to hear from you. So can you share with us sort of some practical strategies for kids who maybe have suffering some trauma in your classrooms?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to go ahead and share a slide deck. These are just some ideas that you can use in your classrooms, both brick and mortar and virtually, depending on where you're at. I've taught both in both environments, so I've been able to integrate those in both ways. So I'm going to go ahead and share, and I'll go through some kind of primary elementary ideas for you guys for helping your students. Here we go. What can we do? So the first thing that you can do in your classrooms is allow adequate time for transitions for those students. That should be your first intervention. If you are in a brick and mortar, you can obviously put up timers. You can have stand timers. You can have you have your clock available to you. If you're in a virtual environment, you can definitely just put up a timer like this and say, hey, we're starting class in 3 minutes. Be ready, to go. And have your space and ready for learning.
I love that, Katie. I'm just going to jump in really quick. I don't mean to throw you off, but my own child was adopted from foster care, and so he has some trauma. And that was one thing that his teacher talked about yesterday was that I just had a conference with her. He really struggles with changing from one thing to another, and so for him, really being able to see that visual, I'm going to change in 3 minutes, rather than just being like, Kate, stop what you're doing and go to the new thing. That then resulted in behaviors from him, because that's a hard shift for him to go from one thing to another. And so really having a visual timer and being able to see. So that seems like such a small thing and like, oh, it's not that big of a deal. But, my son's teacher just said that it's made a huge difference for him to have some warning and some time to like shift his mind to the new project. So I love that was was the first thing, because I think it's critical, and people, I don't know if we think about it as often.
Yeah, absolutely. And those I'm also going to talk later, but just posting the class schedule about what we're doing on the board, and letting students know, like right now we're in ELA time, then we have a recess break, then we're going to have math, so they know what to expect. Again, like you're talking about, Carrie, those expectations are really helpful for those students. Another way for some of these kids that have experienced trauma is even just give them a schedule on their desk, and it can be a picture schedule even for the younger grades. Like, I have a picture of blocks for my math time, and then I have a picture of a kid playing outside for recess with a ball or something. And, and that can just help those kids too, if they just need something that's more closer and tangible for them. That's another option. And then playing music is a great resource. You can do that both virtually and in the brick and mortar. Just have music playing, soft, like classical type music when kids walk into the room or come into your virtual space is another great way. Again, giving those clear expectations like we just talked about. You're in a virtual setting, making sure that those students know that it's the same, we have the same etiquette, as we do in a regular classroom. We're finding a quiet space to work. We're dressed appropriately. Our cameras are on. We're ready to go. In that virtual setting, they need those same expectations that students do in brick and mortar. So just giving them, yeah.
I would kind of add to that, Katie, just in my role doing tech and working a lot with our virtual school and a lot with our teachers when they go virtual. There is such a high anxiety to being in a virtual setting for a student that doesn't understand the expectations, that this is one of the best practices that I think, teachers can do for their students to really help them, have a better understanding of what they're supposed to be doing and where they're supposed to be. Because that virtual setting, and I don't think this matters whether you're a virtual school offsite student or your school has been put into a shutdown situation, there is such a level of anxiety to that for parents and students that this is one of the best things that you can do to be preventative of some of those things.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. Thank you for that. And then again, like we just talked about, posting that schedule and reviewing it often for those students. Just posting it and putting it on your wall is not going to do much, but if you're reviewing it and saying, okay, this is what's coming next, or this is our time frame for this, we have an hour for this, setting up those expectations, that time frame, so those students are ready to go and they understand what's coming next. Is an example of one that I used last year. And provide learning goals or learning targets. If you post those and refer to them, then students know what's expected, where we're going. What am I doing in this lesson? Why am I doing that? What do I need? If you're in a virtual setting, it's really nice to just offer, like I offer check off boxes, like you need to do your seesaw lesson, you need to do your math lesson, you need to do your ELA lesson. So, and then they would just check them off so they knew, okay, I've completed my tasks for the day. That really can help those students. And then offering a safe refocus space in brick and mortar. A lot of those look like calming type corners. I know that's kind of a thing we've been talking about lately. I'm sure, Sarah, you probably have experienced that kind of stuff. But having a space in your room where students can go if they need like an out plan. So that space might look like comfy pillows, books to read, just paper to draw with, sand timers. Like I turn the timer over and when the timer's done, then I'm ready to go back to my space. But I think also it's important to talk about the teachers need an out plan too. They need a way to take a break. So I think it's important that you can find a teaching partner or someone in the building where if you need a mini break time, if you need a space to do that, that you can go ahead and say, hey, I need 5 minutes, or I need to take a walk around the block, or, I need to go to my car really quick and just take a break. That's okay to do that. That's perfectly a good thing to do. So you need it and your students need it. In a virtual setting, that out plan, that refocus space might look a little different, but what you can do is you can send a student to a breakout room. In Google Meets, it's called, we use Google Meets in the Boise School District, and we can just send one child to a breakout room, and I can still monitor that child in a breakout room if they're there. What they do in that breakout room is just, if they can just look at scenery, views of scenery. We're activating those senses for them. So they're just looking through, they're listening to music, to just views of scenery that they can look at and just kind of take that mini break from class. Other ways, so those calming corners in classrooms might have paper and pencil or something to just draw with. In a virtual setting, you can do the same type of thing. In Google Meets, it's called whiteboard. It's essentially Jamboard. In Zoom, we have Zoom whiteboards. And students can just go in there and doodle and draw. And you can come back to that and ask them to explain their pictures or their drawings or what was going on, if they need to have that one-on-one time with you, which is very crucial for those students. And then playing simple brain games can also just help give students a break and kind of reset the class. And this can be done with all students. We can watch one right now if you watch and follow along. All right, and then here's just another one, just another activity. They just follow the blue dot. It gives them a little mini break. All right, and it was just a quick reset, right? You can find these kinds of things just even on YouTube. All right, and then Go Noodle is another great free resource that you can use in your classroom for students. There's lots of mindfulness activities, breathing techniques, things like that that you can do with your students. This is just an example of one of the breathing activities if you want to try it with us. That is also another free resource that you can use for techniques like this. Chewing gum. Chewing gum is not always liked in schools. If you're in a virtual setting, that's another option, but it does have some great ways to decrease anxiety and stress levels by reducing cortisol levels. It can help students stay focused. Sour gum stimulates and the sweet gum soothes. That can be an option for those students. And then there's simple body movements that can be done in a virtual and a brick and mortar setting. So tapping's a great way. I did include a couple resources. This is a teacher one, and there's also a student one, but tapping's also called the emotional freedom technique, and it creates an energy balance by using pressure points, and it can help those students that are anxious. And here's some ideas about how to do that. The drain. So if you want to try this out, here's some techniques you can do virtual and in brick and mortar. So the drain, I can hold my fists really hard for about 10 seconds. So hold them, hold them, hold them, hold them. And then I let the water out. Again, hold them, hold them, hold them, hold them. And let the water out. I like to do this 3 times with my kids. Hold them, hold them, hold them. And let the water out. And if you tried that, how do you feel? Do you just feel a little bit better right now? You probably should. You probably do. The pretzel. So you're going to cross your arms in front of you, and you're going to lace your fingers, and you're going to like put your hands underneath. And then if you put the tongue on the roof of your mouth and breathe out your nose slowly, and you hold your count. Okay. So we can try that right now. Another great technique. Be feeling pretty good right now. Popcorn. I like to do popcorn. You just take your hands, and I tell my students to sit on them. So sit on your hands, and then I might just say pop. And when I say pop, they just put their butts off the chair. So pop, they just pop up and down. I might say pop, 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 pop. Just that quick movement that can really help those students. And that again can be done in brick and mortar and virtual. The cat position. The cat, you are curling up with your, I can't really see right now, but I have my curl up your feet up to your body. So you're like kind of in a ball, and then you reach out and stretch. And you're just like kind of making that kitty bread. So you're just stretching and kneading your hands. Okay. Another easy way. And then on the floor. So when I was in brick and mortar, I would walk by a student and I might just accidentally knock something off their desk. Oh, I'm so sorry. Can you pick that up for me? And doing that movement, that downward movement can reset your brain. Okay. So I might have them pick that up. Obviously in a virtual setting, I can't do that. I'm not there. So I might ask the kids to look on the ground for a piece of trash and show it to me, or just find something really cool that's on the ground in their house and hold it up for us. That's just another way that you can do that at home if they're in a virtual setting, but that downward movement can really help those kids. And then tools for helping. stress balls, rubber bands, fidget spinners, Play-Doh, finger grips, balance balls, bouncy balls for like chairs, bounce seat cushions, sand timers, glitter jars. All those things are tools that you can use. Again, in that virtual setting, students probably don't have all these things. What I liked to do was this hand exercise activity. We can watch this, but it just really required a rubber band, which pretty much everybody has in their house. If they didn't have a rubber band, I told them to go find a hair tie. So, so we'll go ahead and watch. All right. And if you actively participated, how do you feel now? Just think about your body right now. Do you feel a little bit better than just kind of sitting and getting? It helps you, it helps teachers, it helps students. Do you feel a little more focused now, a little more blood flowing through? So those are just a few techniques that you can use to help your students that are experiencing trauma or just need some movement activities in the classroom.
Thank you, Katie. What I love about, most of those activities is that they're super easy. It's not like you have to dedicate this huge chunk of class time. The kid can just sit at their desk and do the rubber band thing, right? Or sit at their desk and, like you said, drop a pencil off. Like all of those things are just things that take just a little bit of time. So it's not, I think teachers are always concerned about that. Like I don't have the time to dedicate to everything, but these are all just really simple little things that you can do in just a short amount of time to help kids really kind of refocus and recenter. I was laughing as you were sharing some of those because my son never just sits and listens to a story without something to fidget with. And it used to drive me crazy, like pay attention to the story. But he can tell you everything that happened in the story at the end of it. But he is fidgeting the whole time, whether he has a toy in his hand or he has these little magnetic blocks he is building with. He's always doing something, but when you ask him about the story or what happened, he can always tell you. And so I think sometimes we have expectations as grown-ups that, like, I just expected that my son would just sit with me on the couch and we would read a book together. And that's not what he does. He usually sits on the floor and plays with something, but listens. And so sometimes we have to adjust our expectations a little bit. I think if they're getting the content and they're listening, then
yeah.
Then it's
What
okay.
I loved about it too is that I don't think that anything really there is not available to any grade. Like it's not inaccessible to any grade. I think that middle school students have that and high school students have that. They don't get rid of that. And fidgeting is, I think, just a part of life. I had a student when I was first teaching who just constantly tapped his pencil on the table. He couldn't help it. He was a drummer. He was very fidgety. He couldn't help it. And it would make his classmates crazy. I took a piece of carpet, put a piece of carpet underneath the pencil. He tapped his pencil all he wanted, never bothered anybody, but it didn't have to change who he was because that's how he worked. And I think a lot of those techniques are really the fingers or moving things or bending down. Those are things we all need to do. And so that's what I really, really loved about what you had there is it's really the truth for everybody, not just, little guys. And we, like Carrie said, we often assume that it's the little guys that need all of that, that we have this vision, I think, as high school teachers that our kids can just sit for however much time and listen to everything that we say, but that's not a reality. And these are great things that, again, like Carrie said, take no time, really beautiful resets for before assessments or exams or, whether you're having a test or a quiz or whatever. Those are great ways to help kids reset both before and after,
Yeah, absolutely. I think another thing too that I hear a lot from teachers is the kid just won't sit in their desk, and is it okay if they take the chair away and they want to stand? Absolutely. That's okay. That's another, that is, they do not have to sit in that chair all day. We offer a lot of, spaces now in classrooms where kids can sit on couches and kids can sit in beanbag chairs, but they can also just push the chair aside and stand, and that's all right. I mean, I have a sit stand desk in my job, and sometimes I'm standing, sometimes I'm sitting. Kids also need that. And you as a teacher, they'll need to be aware about spacing too, and move them to a spot where they're not disrupting or taking the view of other students that are sitting still. But that's okay too. Those are, other.
Yeah, I thank you for sharing that, Katie and Sarah, about the carpet thing. God, that's genius. What I love about those is that some of the trauma-informed stuff, some of these things are about the teachers, about us as adults adjusting our expectations, right? And allowing the kids to do the things that they need to do to still be successful. Probably one of my favorite examples, like I said, I taught 5th grade, but I had a student who constantly doodled all the time. And at first I was kind of like, stop doing that, stop. But then I realized, again, similar to my son, where he would be doodling and I'd be teaching a math lesson and he'd raise his hand and give me the right answer. Like, he knew that that's how he focused. And so I called him out in the hall and I said, all right, I'm going to make you a deal. Like, you can doodle as long as you're not like showing it to all your friends and being really disruptive with it. If you're just going to sit there and doodle, I'm good with it as long as you complete your work and you're not doing it during work time. And his mom told me later that he came home that day so excited because he had spent the previous 4 years in school getting in trouble and having his drawings taken and thrown away or ripped up, or, because he was doing it when he shouldn't have been. And that was the first time that he had felt like that he was just really excited about it. And so she was telling me how grateful she was that he could do that. And that was the deal that we made. And I had very few issues with him behavioral wise or anything else through the school year, which is not what his 4th grade teacher shared with me prior to that. And so I just think that sometimes we need to adjust that was my personal, like, at the beginning, I started out with like, stop drawing while I'm teaching, stop. And then I realized, like, nope, I just have to shift my expectation. If he's getting the content, and he was passing tests, he was doing all the things, then what difference does it make? I mean, I'm fidgeting right now, right? Like, we don't just ever just sit and attend. Yeah. We sometimes expect kids to, so.
Yeah. And part of that's like that self-soothing, like as an adult, you can have a cup of coffee in the morning and you can listen to that music and you can have that salty snack in the afternoon. The kids don't have those options. So they are tapping their pencils and they're fidgeting with their shirt and, they're trying to self-soothe in different ways. And it doesn't look like as we as adults necessarily, because they don't have those, those tools or that understanding necessarily. They don't have access to, that can of Pepsi in the afternoon or something, so they're doing different ways for that. I also think it was great that you highlighted, Carrie, about talking about not taking it personal. These students, when they're doing these things, you shouldn't take it personally as a teacher, right? They are utilizing what they have and their tools. Like your student that liked to doodle, you shouldn't take that personal as a teacher, right? That he needed that out plan, he needed that strategy to be successful for himself, but he wasn't really doing it, as a reflection of your teaching or to be disruptive necessarily. So taking that out of the equation, that it's not a personal thing, is important too.
Well, and I don't know how many people come to Tech Tuesday that are administrators, but it's funny that you mentioned that, Carrie. I was doing a lesson where I was being evaluated by my principal, and I had a student in the back of the room, very quintessential, like back of the room, doodling, and the assumption on the principal's part was that first of all, was that he was not engaged and that he was not listening. And I had a 5-minute video and we were having some discussion, and there was a couple of different transitions for that particular day. And when we went into the evaluation, the principal had told me, I was really looking at your kids that were in the back of the room, checking them for engagement. And you had this one student that was in the back of the room doodling. And I said, I know. And she goes, well, I was concerned about that until you started your discussion. And when you started your discussion, he hit everything and he participated and he was engaged. And she was like, I was worried that you weren't engaging him. But she's like, what I realized was that you were letting him learn the way he needed to learn. And And she says, then I felt like you knew your students better than I knew your students. And I was grateful for that statement because I was like,
Well,
yeah,
yeah.
I see them every day, but that was, that is something that there's a lot of times that we make these assumptions when we walk in and we see students behaving a particular way. And that's something we have to remember, as a tech specialist, as an instructional coach, as an admin, or maybe as a fellow mentor teacher, that, what we see in kids, we want to check in with the other person, about, because teachers know their kids and they know what their kids need, right? Carrie knew she needed to talk to that student, let that student feel comfortable about that coping skill, or that, that habit, whatever it is. Yeah.
I love that. Well, I think we could probably go on and on for a long time talking about this. It's something I'm passionate about, but I love this discussion. What I hope comes from this is that you have some practical strategies that you can use in your classroom, and then also that maybe we can take a minute and think a little bit about our perspective. And I love that Katie added in, it's not usually a personal thing. Kids doing things, it's not usually anything to do with you. It's usually some other thing, whether it was trauma that they suffered or what they're stressed out about something. It's not always the case. Sometimes they don't like you, but a lot of times it's not you. And so just realizing that and being mindful of that, I think, is so important. So thank you for coming today. And thanks to Katie and Sarah for joining in on the conversation, and Katie for sharing the really great resources with us. And scene.